Presented by Botano, Nick Alberga and Jay Rosehill back together for Leafs Morning Take. Rosie, I'm sure you caught this. The big news this past week, Leafs Morning Take, Season 2 launch on October 2nd. How are you preparing, buddy?
We're launching. We've done more meetings and get-togethers than we've done in the past, and I think we're fired up for this year, man. It's a big year for the Leafs and a big year for us, so I think we're going to be ready to rock come puck drop.
Man, speaking of launching, have you been tracking the whole Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift thing?
A little bit. I mean, I got him in my fantasy, and I'm looking for news on him and checking out articles, and I got to scroll through all the Taylor Swift bullshit before I can get to what I'm looking for football-wise. But his brother seemed to do everything but almost confirm it, basically. So I don't know, and I don't really care.
Dude, this guy is going to get gassed before it even is something with Taylor Swift. Like, imagine Taylor's perspective. Do you think she wants this stuff out in the media? And like, the brother broke the news, man. If my brother did that and I was dating some famous girl, I'd lose my shit because I know my chances go down the well.
Why would they want to date each other? Their lives and their schedules would be so polar opposite. What are you going to do? Meet up once a month if you're lucky and then do some Zoom calls? Like, sick relationship, guys. And dating Taylor, I just don't know. I don't care. Focus on football, buddy. You're sick at that. You got a few good years left, and you're the best tight end in the league. Just focus on that, baby. No Tay-Tay.
Hey, did that ever go around the room when you played in the NHL, specifically on the Leafs? Like, oh, so-and-so is dating this girl or whatever. Like, the guys ever talk about that?
Good buddy of mine had the number. He did like some promo thing, and Sloane from Entourage was there, and she was the hot setup at the time, no doubt about it. And he got her number, and he just started dating a different girl in Toronto, and he's like, I'm not going to call her, and he never did. And I'm like, yikes, that is a bold statement, man. But they're married now, so I guess it worked out.
Okay, it worked out. But I think her name's Emmanuel Cherokee.
Yeah, that's right.
But
something like that.
In her day, goodness gracious, I just wondered how that type of business is handled in a room. Like, even now in Anaheim, I don't know how familiar you are with TikTok, but like, supposedly, allegedly, Dixie D'Amelio and Trevor Zegras, who's still without a contract, are a thing. I don't know if like guys razz players in the room about that. Like Travis Kelce, when he goes in his locker room in the NFL, like guys talking about, hey, what's going on with you and Taylor? Like guys mind their own business or what?
Oh, for the most part, I guess. And I think like around the room, the locker room, we're not all shooting the breeze about everyone's romantic life by any stretch. But you go out for lunch or dinner with a buddy and hey, what's going on with this? And he'll tell you something that's going on, I imagine. But I think in Anaheim, you're going to run into that a lot more than you will in most markets.
Rosie, cut the PC bullshit. There's a guy you played with in Toronto who was the captain of the Maple Leafs who dated a movie star, still married to her. You're telling me you didn't ride the coattails of that couple out in the bar scene a couple times a week?
Well, it was weird, man. Like Alicia Cuthbert, she's a good Canadian girl, and Dion's married to her, and she's hanging out in the wives' lounge. My wife's hanging out with her. They're doing events together, and she was a totally down to earth, normal girl. Nothing crazy special about her that you would think was Hollywood or anything glamorous or out there at all. So that was just kind of a non-issue. Bunch of nice gals in there and married to buddies on your team, and they're just doing their thing over there. So it wasn't a huge deal, to be honest, but there was a bunch of backstory to all that, as we all know, with a guest we had on this show. And
what are you talking about?
I stay away from that shit, man.
What are you talking about? Was his name Sean Avery? I forgot about that. We were going to ask him about that too, but like I think our Mount Rushmore of guests potentially to ever have on this show, Phaneuf's on there for me. I don't know if we'll ever get him. We've been trying, but like, I'd love to know about his time in Toronto. He doesn't really talk though, eh?
I was texting him and he's like, I haven't done any podcasts or media, but I love playing with you, Rosie. And he was, let me think about it. But we got to grab a beer or a coffee here when I'm in Calgary. So we'll set that up and see if I can pull some strings a little bit. But he's definitely not been wanting to stay in the limelight very bad post-career, it doesn't seem like.
I respect that. The two names we have been working on for like the last year is Phaneuf and Tyler Bozak. I think both would be tremendous, and we'll try our best to bring that to you at the Leafs Nation 401 on YouTube, where you can subscribe. Again, wherever you catch your podcast as well, just search Leafs Morning Take if you missed it. October 2nd is the official launch of season number 2 of Leafs Morning Take. Monday to Friday, Rosie, 11 a.m. Eastern time. We're live, and we're going 45 minutes this year. We're going longer, buddy. Longer than Dennis Malgin's second tour of duty in Toronto. Your
Owie.
boy.
Owie. Yeah, we're gonna pump it up a little bit, man. I mean, go off script once in a while, shoot the breeze a little bit. If anything's going down, we can really break into it and just have fun with it. I think year number 1 was a success, and why not tack a little bit more on, get some more content going, and have some fun with it, man. But I'm excited. I hope the fans are too.
Yes. Different feel this year, Rosie. I don't know about you. I know it's a couple days in a training camp, but did you notice nobody's really talking about how they shit to bed in 5 games against the Florida Panthers? I mean, having covered this team for the last X amount of years, the prevailing story in training camp has been about the misfortunes in the Stanley Cup playoffs. None of that this year, but I understand why. Like, Kyle Dubas is gone. They bring Brad Treliving in. So there's like renewed optimism, the new extension, for Matthews and Sheldon Keefe. And I mean, Nylander's the big talk, obviously, but like there seems to be like optimism surrounding this team. Maybe it's because some of the additions they made, eh?
It's got to be. I mean, I've definitely felt more negativity going into the season in the past,
Yeah.
and it's almost because they've been so over pumped and overhyped that people just feel the need to dig their heels in and pull back on the reins and say, "Easy, let me tear apart all the holes that I think are in the roster," which is fine. And people are doing that right now, specifically on depth at D, defensive capabilities on the back end. I
Not
think
as
that
loud though.
not as loud. I agree. It's still there if you want to go find it, but there does seem to be a lot of optimism about the season. It's absolutely about what Treliving's done. I think people are really pumped to see Tyler Bertuzzi out there. I think he's the number one shining, addition this year. We got our big boys in place. We know what they can do. And I just think it's just a new look and a new vibe. And I think the biggest thing to me is they covered that bit of a jam role. Like Max Domi's in there and Bertuzzi's kind of got that little rat factor. I think that instead of just quietly going out shift to shift and putting our head down after the whistle and I hope no one bugs me today. It seems like we're going to be the one with a little chip on our shoulder this year. And I hope that's the case because that's good watching. And you want your team to be the one out there being the aggressor, not the one getting picked on all the time. That drove me crazy.
Be honest, man. Scale of 1 to 10. How horned up were you by that video? Were you as horned up as me about seeing Ryan Reeves and Max Domi in a compete drill? Man, that was outstanding. I loved it. I've never seen that from this team.
No, that's good. I mean, everyone I've talked to that's in the league right now has said that training camp is a battle and it's a grind and there's tons of skating. It's fast, not a lot of reps or not a lot of rest in between reps and lots of battle drills going on. And that's what we saw there. That's a small area game you play. Domi's not really trying to take that to the net. It's just kind of right in front of the coach there. You just do little small area battle games. And it's great to see him out there. It wasn't any world beater thing, but I saw you tweet it out that it gave you a little bit of a so
yeah.
It's nice to see. I'm excited. I'm excited to see what Domi can do, to be honest with you. Revo is going to do what I think we know Revo is going to do out there, and he's going to chip his minutes out and play smart, play solid, play safe, and grab anyone by the scruff of the neck if he needs to. That's great. Bang the body, finish with hits, but I want to see Domi crushing guys out there. I want to see him, get back to his form. I think that his potential to play at a high level is still there, and I don't think he's quite been able to have the consistency that I think he's going to be looking for. And I'm just excited all around for everything that's going on, especially the new guys.
I want to see a bloodbath on October 11th against the Montreal Canadiens, the first game of the season. I want to see like 100 penalty minutes. I want to see this team flex their muscles and say, we're here. We're not your regular season Toronto Maple Leafs. We actually have a Stanley Cup in mind. And I think you set a tone from day one. I've been saying this for a while. First month is the biggest story of the season for me, at least in the regular year. Because every year it's the same crap where they come out and they're so lethargic and they barely care. And it's just a different team. And then November shows up. They're like, oh, we should start playing hockey. I want to see consistency throughout the year. And I mean that tongue in cheek, obviously bloodbath, but like, I just want to see some edge to this team. I want to see some urgency. I think guys like Ryan Reeves are going to bring that. Max Domi, Tyler Bertuzzi, guys who are going to drag you through. I'm not talking about Michael Bunting, by the way. Like people trying to compare Bertuzzi to Bunting. It's not the same type of player. And I think it is contagious. You've been in a room, Rosie. It's contagious when you have that type of guy in a room who's going to drag you through a game.
Yeah, I think so. I know. Yeah, I understand the comparison, but I just find Bertuzzi to be high quality stock and Bunting kind of being almost more of a pretender a little bit.
Yeah.
He had that one big year, no doubt. He's got the capability, but after that, it just seemed like he was just grasping at what his identity was. I was not a fan of the way he he developed a reputation in the league, basically. So I think
Mhm.
Bertuzzi's kind of head and shoulders more high quality than that. And I am excited for these new guys. And that's the talk, no doubt. It's exciting to see them in the blue and white at camp for the first time, being like, holy, they're here and they're really doing it. And you're excited for the first game, no question. And I do want to see them play with some jam too. It's a little bit of FU, you know, and
Yeah.
the Leafs haven't had that. They've been uber talented, uber offensive, but they just haven't had that chip on their shoulder that like for how much talent and everything they have. I want Marner and Matthews to be able to have more of a little cocky swagger to him, like get the hell out of my way and watch what I do.
Yeah.
They don't seem to just have that body language wise. And now that they're surrounded with the right pieces, and we're talking about them more than we're talking about that core four, which is nice for a change. And I'm just hoping that as a cohesive unit, how about that? A cohesive unit together. I hope they gel off the beginning and just go on an absolute tear and make teams scared to face them in all aspects of the game.
Imagine that. Rosie has a chill, nice summer with his family, comes back, and the word cohesive is in his vernacular, man. That's
vernacular.
yeah,
I feel like
you know what that means.
I feel like John Scott, man, he threw a thesaurus at us first interview there. I like that. He blew my hair back with some of that.
Dude, I can't get over those like Steve Bartman like headphones he had on, man. Like it just brought back shades, even if there's something about Mary, you know, the brother.
Yeah, Warren.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I had flashbacks. I should mention as well, and we feel I neglected to do it off the top. We had a pretty damn good interview on today's show. We had some time to spend, like 25 minutes with Biz Nasty, Paul Bissonnette, and very timely, of course, the whole Babcock thing. Dude, he was tremendous. I can't wait for everybody to hear this.
Yeah, he's solid. He's polished, and we had a lot to talk about, and he wasn't scared to dig into it. It was a great interview, so I'm hoping the fans of the show spread that around a little bit and enjoy it themselves.
So camp opens up, and we're all waiting. Like, what's going to be the big story? Is it going to be Nylander's contract? Well, I could tell you it was Nylander, but more surprising, and this had been hinted a couple days, I think, before camp by Elliot Friedman. But they're looking at Willie Nylander up the middle. That's something that long term they're dedicated to here, at least in training camp. What was your initial thoughts when you saw that? For me, it came out of nowhere. And the thing that really stood out is this was the GM's decision, Brad Treliving, his idea as opposed to the coach. Man, it's so crazy. Times have changed like tenfold from like the last 15 years.
Yeah, it's different. That is interesting on where it comes from and who decides. I can't see Sheldon Keefe having a problem with it, with him juggling the lines and
your favorite. Your favorite
time. He loves putting them in a blender and throwing it against the wall, and he doesn't even wait for it to stick. He just switches it up the next day. So I don't think he would mind much. But in my mind, a player of the caliber of William Nylander to play center, he's got the vision, he's got the hockey sense, the speed, the agility, the ability. It's not going to bother him, right? There's going to be a couple defensive zone tasks that he needs to get on, playing the wing. It's pretty up and down, you know, but as a centerman, you got to get on the right side, help your defenseman out, and then support your wingers. It gives you the freedom to kind of go wherever you want and be more creative with your ice time, which I think he'll love. It's just going to be a slight adjustment, getting used to some of the assignments that he has out there. But like I said, a player at his caliber, it is not going to be hard for him to adjust. And I think he's obviously open to it. I don't know if he'd say otherwise, but giving a guy the reins to go play center and really be creative when you have his talent and his skill set, I don't think is going to be an issue.
Look, I'm all for experimenting. In the long run, I don't think it works out. We've seen this a lot in the last couple of years. They've given him an opportunity, especially when there's injuries, and he hasn't been like out of this world, like different Willie Nylander. But I think I would theorize it. He's in a contract here. He wants to get paid like the big boys. You move him to center. There's your comparable. If you're the Nylander camp, 8 times 9.75, 78 million. That's Sebastian Aho's contract. It gives them versatility. Like, I get it. It gives you length, and we'll talk about the lines momentarily. If it pans out in the long run, maybe you figure out a way, John Tavares on the wing as opposed to up the middle. But the fact that you can go Matthews, Tavares, Nylander up the middle, whatever way you want to put it, Nylander's or Tusi, I don't care. It gives you depth. But I think in the long run, you go back to what works. I just think you want this in your back pocket if, say, you get into another matchup with Tampa in the playoffs and you want Nylander as a center. But again, we talked a lot last year, Rosie, about experimenting, and I'm right there with you. Like every day we showed up on this show and we're like, new lines, new lines, new lines. Get this out of the way now, because game 1 of the season, I want you to know where this guy's playing.
Good luck with that game 1 of the season. I'm fine with dicking around in October. September, I could care less about. October, fine. November, look, the beginning of the season, do what you need to do to find your gel and to get these guys finding chemistry. It doesn't really matter to me. But what I did not like is 2 weeks before the puck drop of the Stanley Cup playoffs, and we're dicking around with this stuff. You better be finding it by that time and have it figured out by that time, know who you are and what you do best by the time the playoffs roll around, and then just walk into it and present yourself. Here we are. We know who we are, instead of trying to find some magic formula a week and a half before the playoffs. I did not like that at all. I do not think teams that win the Stanley Cup are doing that. They know exactly who they are, but I don't mind messing around trying to figure that out right now. This is the time to do it.
So I mentioned the lines, and again, very, very premature to suggest these are the lines for opening night against the Montreal Canadiens. It's very early in camp. They haven't even played a game as we record this. But Bertuzzi, Matthews, Marner, Nyes, Tavares, Lafferty on the second line, Yarncroke, Nylander, Domi, Gregor, Kampf, and Reeves, then Riley, Brody, McCabe, Klingberg, Giordano, Liljegren. We're not really shocked at the back end, but what sticks out for you? For me, it has to be Sam Lafferty as your second line right winger. I'm just not sure that's going to stick, Rosie.
Yeah, that was me too. I didn't have him picked in the top 6. It looks a little funny up there. I do understand spreading it out and giving yourself depth in the top 9 there by having the top 3 lines capable. I don't love absolutely leaning on your top 6. And then if things aren't going well, you're kind of up the creek. I don't think that's the position they'll be in, but it just seems weird having Lafferty. It's like we need one. It's just like, do we have a little bit more depth to be up there? And I mean, Nyes, I'm really excited for. I didn't touch on that for what to watch this year. I mean, he gets kind of, because he got his taste last year, he gets left in the shuffle when we're talking about camp and whatnot. But I'm very pumped to see Matthew Nyes and what he can do out there. If Lafferty, he's going to have to step it up if you want him to be a top 6 player with these guys and all these guns. And if you want a guy like Willie Nylander to be down in the bottom 6, it just looks funny. It doesn't seem like it's a fit that makes sense to have Sam Lafferty on the top 6 of this powerhouse forward group. But they're going to try it out. Time will tell. Guys step up sometimes. Guys find magic with those players. You think of the guys who have played with the top of the league guys, the Sidney Crosbys and the McDavids, and their careers get made by getting a chance with those guys and saying, wow, I fit with these guys. I understand what he's doing out there, and I can be there to facilitate what he does. And they just rack points up and find chemistry. So obviously they're looking for that. Whether it works out or not, we'll find out.
Yeah, to be fair, I mean, the lines aren't as distinguished, I should say, as they were 15 years ago. Like the Tavares line, it's all about deployment, utilization. I would imagine the Nylander line would probably get more 5-on-5. Like, not to say Tavares is not the same player, but he's still like the best point per game player in the league. It seems like every year you know what you're going to get from John Tavares, but I wouldn't line the lines. To me, that, you know, what really sticks out from these trios are the fact that there's like no distinguished like checking line. And I know lots change. You look at some of the winning teams from the past, but there's not that one line where you're like, this line can go out there and shut down the opposition. It's changed a lot. I don't mind the look. As I mentioned, I think there comes a time where Nylander's back on the wing, or maybe Nylander's the center and Tavares is the winger. But this is the time to experiment at the very least.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's why I'm not too wrapped up in it. I just kind of, oh, neat. We'll see how because, you know, Keefe's got a track record of mixing it up so quickly and almost, I think to a fault last year. I'm like, can you give guys time to figure things out? I mean, maybe you're looking for lightning in a bottle, but that doesn't just happen every time you throw lines against a whiteboard and say, go do this. And then if it doesn't happen that day, you got to mix it up again. Hopefully he gives some time to figure these guys out. Hopefully he's talking to them as well, saying, where do you think you fit? How do you like this? And sometimes in a private conversation with the coach, you're like, I just don't know what the guy's doing out there. I just can't guess where he's going to be. And I just can't rely that he's going to be there in this situation. Like a guy that you love playing with, that you have that chemistry with, you get to a point where you just know you get into a jam, boom, you hit this spot on the ice and you know your support is there because he knows where you're at, and you think the same way. And sometimes guys think differently, and there's that little bit of friction, and maybe no one wants to say it out loud. But as long as you keep the communication open with those top end players and the coaches, I think you'll be able to find something that works.
Again, very early, but notable omissions from that lineup. Pontus Holmberg, Bobby McMahon, I think, is still banged up right now. And Nick Robertson, man, like we talked about this last week, this is the time. This is go time for Nick Robertson. Steal a spot here, right? Like you even see a newcomer like Noah Gregor on a PTO, and he's in that lineup and you're not. I want to see some fire from Nick Robertson.
Yeah, it's time to get pissed off. It's time to decide what the trajectory of your career and what it's going to be on for. You know, you're at the point in your career where you've had some taste, had some looks, had some injuries, and it's like, okay, it's kind of time to make your bed here. And are you ready to do it or not? And sometimes it takes getting a little pissed off and showing up and saying, "Hey, remember me," and making the eyes up in the box there get a little bit wide and say, "Oh my, we got to." We got to do something about this kid. Make their job hard, man. That's your job coming out of camp when you're trying to make the NHL.
When you were in the press box, were you like the popcorn guy making a tea? I know Gord Stellick and I always have that infamous story, especially I think it was a couple years back. Ilya Mikheyev had like the injured wrist, and we'd always like be making coffee beside this guy in the press box. And it was like a running gag on our shows that I was making tea for Ilya Mikheyev. What were you like in the press box?
What was I like? I like to set up shop kind of away from everybody, watch the game, sit with whoever else was there. You know, you get your suit pocket full of some Skittles maybe and hang out. I'd always watch for who was cruising around the press box and TO.
Of course you were.
Don Cherry comes in there. I like to cross paths with him and just hear what he had to say. I think the guy grew up watching him. He's a legend, regardless of what you think about him. He is, and I always like bumping into him. It was surreal for me. So yeah. Hung out, man. Hoped I would get in the lineup. Wondering why I was spending so many days up here, but I think people knew why.
Yeah, probably. If I ever ran into you in a press box, I'd be like, "Excuse me, sir, where's the washroom?" I would think you're an attendant at Scotiabank Arena. So
yeah, you'd be the guy with the red suit on and in the hotel. Exactly. we have plenty of towels, thanks.
Which way to your box, sir? All right, let's get to the interview again. It was unbelievable. Like it was a lot of fun. Probably the most fun we've had in an interview this season. We've had some gem interviews, but without further ado, let's get to Paul Bissonnette. We tackled a bunch of different topics, didn't we, Rosie?
Yeah, we did. Good interview, as you'd expect. Hope you guys enjoy it.
Paul Biz Nasty Bissonnette. What's going on, buddy? How are you?
What's going on? I got bullied by Rosie to come on here. He said he's going to beat my wheels off again if I didn't come on. So I said, sure, boys.
I think we had video teed up that said the lesser known scrap in Toronto there. I think you probably got the best of me, big boy.
Nah, I don't know about that. Did you guys see the picture on the one that we had when you were with the Flyers? It looked like you were putting my eye drops in.
Eye gouging you?
Yeah.
You gotta do what you gotta do, baby.
Hey, that you didn't eye gouge me. It must have just been taken at the perfect time where you ended up getting me right there, and it looked like you were eye gouging me.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to rip your Bucky off at in front of the bench there, but I know I saw that too. Someone put eye drops in my hands too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, all the memes start flying as soon as the internet takes over.
Dude, I think it's so fucking hilarious. Like when you get like two former fighters together, because like I wonder like conversations in like 20 years when there's been no fights in hockey, like former tough guys who have went after each other for years, like what that conversation is going to be like. What's it like seeing each other for, I don't know, you probably haven't seen each other very many times since those two scraps.
I think, Rosie, you could speak for yourself, but I'm just relieved that I don't have to do it for a living anymore, because I would get anxiety before games knowing that I would end up having, or in most cases, having to go out there and scrap. And so anytime I talk to a guy I fought before, like we just had Nasty Marasti on the podcast, John Nasty Marasti, and like we were joking around the fact that he broke my nose probably 2 or 3 times. We've had Yablonsky on. So for me, it's more relief, and we can have a good chuckle about the fact that we used to get paid to go after one another.
Yeah, it's funny, man. Like I had anxiety about hockey in general and fighting too, but meeting up with a guy that you did it with, it's just like, you know, he'd be your best buddy on the team, and you know, you think alike. So it's not not a big deal at all. But my buddy last night actually was sending me some fights for some reason of back in the day. There's like some clip of being with the Flyers, and he's like, "What happened with you in press here or something?" And I went and looked at it, and my heart just went, bah, 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 and I was like, "Fuck, dude, I can't look at this right now, or I won't go to sleep." So it brings back memories of like a different life for sure.
Oh yeah, get the beats per minute up for sure. Yeah, as soon as you start watching them, you get all jacked up.
Well, it's great to have you on, man. What's the last week been like for you? Like off the air, we were talking about you're at a point where you need a publicist for all these interview requests, eh?
I've been swatting a few away, but I know I owed you guys one, and of course, like I said, having fought Rosie and him getting involved in the media game, you got to snap it around. So it's it hasn't been fun. Like doing something like that's not fun. I'm happy that the former player of Mike Babcock, a guy who's still in the league, reached out and explained what was going on. Did I think that it was ever going to get the traction that it got off the original podcast? No. People might think I'm being naive when I say that, but it was something that I'd mentioned to Whit when we were just talking about going into that next show. Like, hey, like what types of things you want to talk about? And I was like, hey, listen to this one. And he was like, what? So in the midst of the podcast, I completely forgot about it to mention it. And he teed me up. So it came off like we were almost like half joking because we were just, being ourselves and talking the way we talk. But ultimately, if that former player doesn't reach out to me and say, hey, you got to expose that this is going on for the sake of the young guys who are probably having to deal with it, where even this guy being an older guy, like he went through exactly what we described, and his life was to be made a living hell while playing for Babcock. So I think that he was just like, enough's enough. Like the fact that this guy hasn't learned, like not only does he, does he need to face punishment for this, but when he was playing in Toronto, they used to have a designated guy who would warn guys about this behavior. Like, think about that. You'd have to have a guy on the team to warn new players about the fact that this was going to happen. And I know it was portrayed as something innocent, but that was not the case. This was a power dynamic. This was this guy using leverage. And in some cases, from what we described on the podcast, it was actually even worse what was going on in Columbus, which ended up coming to light with all the meetings.
So you've been very open with your anxiety. One of the things I love about you in general, you're authentically yourself. Like you said it, you're from Welland, Ontario. And I love that aspect of you. Like, what was your first reaction? So you get this text and obviously you're like, holy shit. But like, I don't know about you. Like I've been tipped off a couple of times in my career, like a major trade or something's happening. And then I put it out and I'm like, I feel that anxiety. Like, what was that situation like for you when you bring it up on the podcast and it starts to blow up a bit?
Well, so as soon as we got done recording, I'm like, I should probably reach out to a guy from the team and just double check. I know that this guy wouldn't be lying about this and the fact that he'd also talked to players on the team. But once I got confirmation, I was like, oh, okay, well, it's happening. So glad that these other guys are going to get the heads up, and whatever happens from it happens from it. So yeah, I mean, I was a little bit the next day I opened up Twitter like later in the afternoon, and I understand that this thing had caught fire. Yeah, obviously you're just, your heart's racing and you're like, oh geez. And then when they come out with a statement denying it, you're like, okay, now I'm in one. And from then on there, it was more of just, we understood that we were telling the truth. The thing that helped me calm down about it was the fact that more stories were coming in after the initial PA and Columbus statement, where Johnny and Boone Jenner had basically said that they weren't uncomfortable with the interactions. Now, I don't want any negative light shone on Johnny and Boone, because the type of situation they're in, where what if they do tell the truth and then there is no action taken and Babcock stays around? Rosie, I don't know. Did you ever play for Babs?
No, I didn't. And I get those guys are just doing damage control for their team right there. But I mean, the important part to me, and I think you've said it, is like, I hate cancel culture. I fucking hate it. Where a guy said something 12 years ago where that was half acceptable at the time. They dig that up and there goes the guy's career. I can't stand that shit. But this wasn't that. This has got nothing to do with that. And I've had these coaches before where, whether it's as intentional as Babs seemed to be or not, they just going to the rink, they hold it over your head. They use their power in a way that's just like nothing else I've seen. I've done other things in my life, and there's nothing that I compare to these coaches that fuck with you like that. And it's unnecessary. It's got nothing to do with a hard-nosed coach that demands perfection, that demands you give everything you have. Nothing to do with that. I'm all for that. This guy's just a pure prick. And I appreciate how you stuck to your guns, because I got tons of memories of, you know, how much different those types of guys were than the good coaches I had, and why those guys are still allowed to be in the game just blows my mind. And you guys blew the lid off of it, and rightfully so. There's no reason for that bullshit. It's got nothing to do with hockey.
And all that stuff that he'd done in the past, as bad as it is, and the list goes on and on and on. I even said after everything had came to light, like, I had no ill will towards this guy. I'm a second chance guy. If he went away and rehabilitated for 4 years and figured out the way that he was treating these players were making him feel that the way that these guys are expressing now, then good for him. You know, like where are we as a society if you can't let a guy go rehabilitate and come back and get a second chance? I mean, within reason. I mean, we're not talking about like murder here, but yeah. It was Bush League. And then I'm sure you guys have heard the worst of the worst is the fact that one of the situations was at his house in Michigan, and he was scrolling through the guy's pictures and his text messages. Like, what does that have to do with hockey? It doesn't.
Like, you can't do that in a fucking steel mill if you work there. Like, there's nowhere on the planet you can do that. And it's just these coaches just sometimes, some of them, the bad ones, think they can do whatever the hell they want. And you can't do that anywhere in the world, especially now. Why would you be able to do this to these grown men who have, you know, worked their ass off to get to this level? You can't treat them like, you know, an ant. It just doesn't work that way. They have their lives, and they have their own self, you know, respect, and they shouldn't have to put up with that bullshit.
And I keep trying to shed light on the fact that, like, this was a former player stepping up and letting me know about it. This has nothing to do with the Chiclets podcast. This is a former player of Babcock sticking up for these new guys in Columbus. This is the players in Columbus coming together and putting their foot down. And this is a great job by the PA to, even though the first allegations were shut down and they came out with that statement, they still ended up looking more into it. And then they ended up going to Columbus and then finally digging into this to understand that these younger players, if the PA doesn't show up, these guys don't have the balls to come forward and explain what is actually going on. And everyone's saying, well, like, oh, well, what's he going to use in the camera roll against these guys? Like, I don't understand the power dynamic argument, where it's like, I'm telling you, this former player who told me about this, when he got to Toronto, it was the same experience, and his life was to be made a living hell to the point where he had to ask for a trade to get out of the situation. That's not the way this stuff should be going down. This is not the way that these kids should be treated. We're not talking about accountability and getting bag skated because you played like a dog the night before. We're talking about mental warfare here.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, the even bigger story is Columbus, and we said this when Babs was hired. It was fucking ridiculous. He had to wait for his contract to wrap up before he can sign a deal. Like, yeah, get every penny, Mike. And then number two was like the fact that Columbus went through this process, and this is the only guy they thought could do the job for them. Like, there's so many, you know, and I think you had a nice piece on Pascal Vincent the other day. Like, poor guy, he steps in his first National League job behind the bench as a head coach, and here you are taking over for Mike Babcock. But I got to ask you, like, you got a thank you text from a guy like Patrick Laine yet, or what?
No. And like, I would imagine that their PR team was like, stay away from that guy, stay as far away from that guy as possible. This isn't about me. This isn't about Spittin Chiclets. This is about a team getting a coach who deserves to be in that position now, coaching them to where they get to show up to the rink every day and enjoy the game that they fell in love with to begin with, and not being discouraged by some of the mental warfare that might have been going on if they would have had Babcock as a coach. Because if it's starting before training camp in year one that he's been reinstated,
ridiculous. I
can only imagine if he's getting away with that, where the power and all that starts to grow in his own head. So, and I hate to be shitting all over Babcock here, but I don't know. I guess I wasn't very impressed with that statement on the way out either. There was no accountability.
Dude, they thanked him.
Yeah,
how do you thank the guy?
Yeah, I don't. Hey, if you got to cover your own ass, I understand. But there's one guy who the problem was, and he's out, and we can leave it at that.
Yeah, there doesn't seem to be a redeeming quality about him, does there? But I wanna rewind back a little bit, Biz. I mean, you talk about so much, and you're very self-deprecating is one of your shticks, it seems like. But I remember, rewind back to 2010 or so. You and me are both about the same vintage, cracking into the NHL. I'm with Toronto. You ended up, started with Pittsburgh and ended up in Phoenix's organization. And I remember you were hitting the Twitter hard and making some noise with it, not pulling any punches, not holding back, saying what you thought. And at the time, like now, but even more so, the NHL was pretty conservative. Guys didn't put themselves out there all that much. And I specifically remember guys saying, that guy is tweeting himself right out of the league. You're never going to hear from him again, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't have Twitter when I was in Toronto. I probably should have, but I didn't want to put myself out there. And I remember all the shit you'd say to the trolls and whatnot. And just, boom, years go by and you look at what you got going on now. What was that whirlwind like for you and how it just took off?
Well, so I was fortunate because when I got picked up off by waivers, there was 3 teams that put in a claim. It was Phoenix, Minnesota, and Toronto. And you're in Toronto and you said, oh, I should have hopped on it then. But I don't think that organization would have allowed a quarter of what I was doing on social media. And it just so happens because I was in Phoenix, I don't think they just really didn't seem to care that much. Did I get called in at a certain point a few times to get pee-pee whacked? Yeah. I mean, Don Maloney had to say, hey, man, come on. This is ridiculous that you're doing this. But I was just fortunate that I ended up in a market where it was okay for me to let it fly. And I was able to just be myself online. And it, like you said, especially the NHL, as conservative as it is, they had never seen an athlete going online and just acting the way that I was acting. So I think that some people took a liking to it. It obviously gained traction because of how different it was. And I was able later on to get just more and more opportunities from it. Like I remember one year I went to work for Sportsnet during the All-Star break. Now, this is a crazy story. So I was going to do a bunch of content with them. And at the time I was on Twitter, I had a BlackBerry then. And when we were going around all day and we were filming content, somehow it had gone into my phone had opened up, and because I don't think I even had a lock on it at that point, it went into my pictures. And when you share funny pictures with the guys on the team, there was a Happy New Year, and it was in cocaine lines, and like a girl was snorting the H on the Happy New Year. So it just kept tweeting this photo over and over and over. So it must have tweeted this picture 25, 30 times out of my pocket. So finally, after like 4 or 5 hours of me filming this content, I pull out my phone and I see all these like replies to it, like, oh, this guy's done. This is the final straw. Da, 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 da. I got a missed call from our PR guy with the Coyotes, Rich Nairn. And I'm like, oh, we obviously ended up, everybody, there was a couple replies that said, oh, he must have been hacked because it tweeted out 25 times. So I went with that right away. I'm like, oh yeah, hacked. And for whatever reason, I couldn't delete them on my phone. So I had to like go to the sports book. Somebody let me in the back and we logged onto a computer and like ended up deleting everything. So there was definitely some crazy times in the early days of my Twitter antics, but the line from back then as to what you could say online to where it is now has drastically changed. And I guess fortunately enough for me, I was able to walk that line. And as I said, it continued to open up more and more doors for me to where I became more comfortable on camera. And I would say my heart rate after opening up my phone after that was probably more so if I was the last man back stick handling and I had Datsu coming in forechecking on me.
I believe it. Well, Biz, we were a Leafs show, and we had some things to talk about, but big things happening in Leafland. I noticed last year more than ever, you kind of started to voice your fandom for the Maple Leafs, and it's a good time to do so. What are you thinking about this year with everything they've put together over the summer?
I like it. I think that they did a good job of retooling. I think they were fortunate with the cap situation where it is to get Tyler Bertuzzi on a 1-year deal at that price. I'm very interested to see what happens with Nylander at center. I mean, he's a dynamic player as it is, but there also is a lot more responsibility defensively. So, hey, why not start it earlier in the season to see where it goes? I like where their toughness is at. I still think that there's probably a little bit of a question mark on the back end as far as maybe where the depth is, but and then maybe a little bit net. But It sucks that Murray's injured again, but overall, I think that this is a team that's easily going to make playoffs. So it's just a matter of what they can do and how they're gelling at the time where they do get there. But getting Max Domi in the mix, I mean, he's a hometown kid, so you got to imagine that's adding a little bit more spunk to his game. And so I just like where they are from a team toughness perspective, especially with adding Reeves as well. All the other guys can just worry about playing. If they need him in the lineup, and if he ends up playing 50, 55 games, great. If he's in the lineup every night, even better. So they have that intimidation factor. But top to bottom, I think that they're pretty much right where they were at last year. They're going to finish top 3 in that division, and they're going to make playoffs. Yeah,
I'd argue they're better too. Speaking of Revo, like he played when we were playing, and I mean, there's a plethora of guys that have been wiped out of that role, and he's managed to stay in the league. And I always, shake my head and say, good on him for continuing to find, a way and find contracts and find teams. And he's walked that line so well with that role and being a great locker room guy. What do you see that's kept him in the league for so many years after similar guys have been done and gone?
I mean, he's still a guy who can play like that 8 to 9 minute range, right? Like I was a guy who was playing 3-4 minutes, and you seem to get really lost in the shuffle. You get out there for your 2 shifts a period, you're cold. So I've just noticed throughout his career that the teams that he's on, the coaches trust him enough to throw him out there to where he's able to stay warm and relevant. I think he brings a lot to the lineup. He doesn't shy away from the physical stuff where he doesn't forget what his role is. No. So I think that overall, I think that he's a very solid 4th line player who can bring that 8 minutes a night and add that intimidation, especially for the fact that there's no other guys in the league like him. What is there, 5-6 guys that could maybe scrap with him?
Maybe.
I would put Wi-Fi, Lucic, Delorier, McDermott. Like who else would maybe fight him? So
that's covering most of it.
There you go, right? So I think that that's still a very important aspect of today's game. And when you got guys who are drawing as much attention as Matthews, Nylander, Marner, night in, night out, it's going to help where you say, hey, go out there and remind those guys if they go near him a little bit closer, what's going to happen. Yeah, and I think that plays. It's a very valid, and you're only paying the guy $1.5 million, so it's perfect.
Yeah. Boys, it's great that you're both scrappers, because like my biggest question is like, what's different from Revo, from Matt Martin or Wayne Simmons or anybody else who's been in that Maple Leafs lineup is?
I think, like I said, I think that Matt Martin's a guy, I bet you he's probably playing even more minutes. Because Islanders rely heavily on that 4th line with Cizikas and Clutterbuck. And I mean, they've been together for how long now? I bet you they've played probably 300 games together at least. So as long as you could throw them out there from that 8 to 10 minute range, they still add value. Where if you're only playing 2-3 minutes, that's where you're now all of a sudden you're throwing your top 3 lines out there too much, and it's too much strain on those top 3.
Yeah, and I think it's different because that's a different era with a different team. Like Matt Martin, I think would, at the same time that he was there, if he was here now, would be valuable. It's timing. This team's ready to rock. They're top of the NHL. They have the potential to win a Stanley Cup, and you can see it from the Lightning. They come in and they try to run you right out of the barn. You got Stamkos ragdolling stars. Like, you can't let that shit happen. And if you have a weakness, a team's going to try to expose it. And at this point in time, when they're ready to go and make a run, you need to fill that void, or you'll be exposed. That's why I think now is a good time for him.
Hey, Biz, you got some Jurgens lying around?
Why you ask?
Because I got a steamy one for you that I think you should bring up on the pod.
A rumor?
No, just in general. Steven Stamkos. We want to fire that up.
You think coming home?
Let's go, baby.
I think that he probably gets a deal like Kopitar, where he ends up staying. And these guys, well, I mean, difference because there's no state tax. If I'm them, I try to get Stamkos locked in at about the $4 million range. But hey, if all of a sudden this thing drags out, I could see him itching to come back home and taking even more so of a hometown discount than he would staying in Tampa Bay. So that would be some much added leadership as well. Because, you got this core group of guys in Toronto who are still a little bit younger, who haven't made it over that hump. I think adding guys like that alleviates a lot of that pressure. That's why, I mean, having a guy like JT around is important. Mind you, he has not won a Stanley Cup. So I would imagine come playoff time, he feels just as much of that pressure from that as that other members of the core group being as young as they are. But the older guys you can add in there to deflect, much like Ryan O'Reilly did come playoff time. Like if they don't trade for Ryan O'Reilly, there's a few moments in that series against Tampa Bay, which they didn't deserve to win, where he stepped up and made a play where that's the whole reason they made it out of the first round. I mean, you go back to the face-off he won. You go back to was he the one who scored the goal, or was he the one who passed it to Nylander in the one game? But either way, he made 2 massive plays in the first 3 games to help them bring them to victory.
You just need you need more guys like that, right, Rosie?
Yeah, I mean, adding Stammer to anybody is incredible. Why they didn't at least talk to him about it, obviously cap concerns and whatnot in this day and age is a huge deal, but I don't know. At this point in time, even talking about Stammer being added to the roster is just amazing. But I mean, you're looking at Nylander, Stammer. I mean, little crossway thing going on would be pretty incredible. I don't know if Stammer is ready to leave the golf course and hit the lights and the media hooredness that is Toronto at times. So only he knows, but it's fun to throw it around.
It's a Leafs podcast when you're fucking stirring it up like this, talking Stamkos coming home already. We haven't even started the fucking season yet. Pump the brakes.
Yeah,
no, yes, I do have my Jurgens.
Hard.
We interviewed Frank Saravalli the other day, and we're already asking about extensions for like Domi and Tyler Bertuzzi. They haven't even played a game yet. So we do.
Yeah, well, that cap's probably going to bump up $5 million, and depending on how the season goes, these guys are going to probably get their payday.
I know it's been a hell of a week for you, but good on you for everything you've done, and we appreciate you coming on, man. We'll wrap her up for you.
Hey, thank you guys so much. We'll do it again soon, and go Leafs, go!
Attaboy.
Hope you enjoyed that interview as much as we enjoyed bringing it to you. For now, we're going to get to the Betano wrap-up presented by Betano.ca. The game starts now, 19+. Please play responsibly. And Rosie, I'm going to lean on you for today's hit. Let's look at some NFL or some football, I should say.
Yeah, it's a tough pick. I go down the games coming up here on Sunday, and we got the Bills playing the Commanders. Commanders are 2-0. Bills being 1-1. I don't think Josh Allen's very happy being at 500 right now. I think he's going to come out slinging. I think they are a -6.5 favorite, and I think Josh Allen's going to put himself on the map. He had that tough first week. I think he's going to be slinging it, and they're going to win by more than a touchdown, knock those Commanders down a peg or two. And my money's on Josh Allen and the Bills, -6.5 this week.
I like it. I like it. And my money is on season 2 of Leafs Morning Take. Don't forget, October 2nd, we launch 11 a.m. Eastern time. We're going 45 minutes this season per show. That's our rough estimate. Great guests, great co-hosts as well when Rosie's not in the mix. But we're tinkering as well with 3 hits with Rosie. There's going to be something a bit different that I think people are going to like very much, Rosie.
Yeah, maybe it turned out and maybe should have been named Rosie's Rants from the get-go. But if there's something that is on the board that might be controversial, that might have some opinionated people get involved on it, send her my way on Twitter. And I'm always looking to dissect things and see what's going on and see why some people's opinions are this way or why people are doing things that way. It's fun for me. And I think there's going to be a lot of content this year in the NHL season to rant about.
You talked about Josh Allen slinging it around. You're going to sling it around for sure here on Leafs Morning Take. So at the Leafs Nation 401 on YouTube, where you could subscribe, Leafs Morning Take, wherever you get your podcasts. I would like to thank Paul Bissonnette for coming on today, producer Aaron Bordato for making sure everything stays on the rails. To you, Rosie, we'll talk next week. Okay, bud?
Looking forward to it, man. Let's get this season going.
Cannot wait. That's Jay Rosehill. I'm Nick Alberga. Thanks so much for watching and listening. Take care.